Greetings, 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 greetings. Welcome, welcome everyone, wherever you may be. Thank you for joining me this morning as we begin the process of learning something new. I'm your host, Dr. Onyoha Usimere, and I am excited to bring the Ntomodu show to you today. Ntomodu, for those of you who don't know, is Igbo Nigerian word that means words of wisdom that I share that you can add to your repertoire. You know, we're never too old or too young to learn something new. Even a baby can learn something new, and so can every one of us. So thank you. Here you are. I'm so glad that you're joining me. The topic of our show today is Voices from the Abyss. Voices from the Abyss. We're talking about the Sudan crisis. Now, how many of you are familiar with the crisis in the Sudan? Now, chances are that not many of you are aware of what's going on in the Sudan, or for that matter, in the Congo, and many parts of Africa engulfed in conflict. And what you do know about what's going on is shaped by the narratives you hear in the media, or something that you read in the media. Today, I'm going to focus on the Sudan right now, and the reason why many of you are not even aware of what's going on in the Sudan. And then after we watch a video that I will share, I will explain to you why you don't know much about what's going on in the Sudan. It's quite extensive. So, but today, I'm going to just talk about what you don't know much about, or rather why you don't know much about it. That's what I'm going to focus on. I'm going to speak about what should be done about it and who's doing what about it, so that we don't continue to have a nonchalant attitude towards some of the worst atrocities going on in the world today. We are going to approach this today by just explaining what's going on and why you're not hearing much about it. And then next, in my next show, we're going to go into more details about who's doing what, who's trying to help bring attention to what's going on in the Sudan. Now, before we get started, if you could quickly hit the like button to increase our subscriptions, it will really be appreciated. I tend to say that all the time. You know, if you're joining us for the first time, we'd appreciate it if you would go ahead and hit that subscription, and also hit like, because the more individuals that we're showing like our shows, the better. I want to share this video. This is very important because it has to do with just a little background about what's going on in the Sudan before we really get into it. I think it's important for you to at least get a little background information.
Country, and no one's backing down. Here's what happened in 1 minute. In April 2023, Sudan's National Army went to war with a powerful paramilitary group called the RSF, the Rapid Support Forces. It started as a power struggle between two generals who used to be allies. Both wanted to control Sudan after years of military rule, but their fight turned the capital, Khartoum, into a battlefield. Tanks on the streets, jets bombing neighborhoods, and millions trapped with no food or water. In just months, more than 12 million people were forced to run. The biggest displacement crisis in the world right now. Hospitals were destroyed, famine hit, and entire cities turned to rubble. In Darfur, reports say the RSF carried out massacres, burning villages and killing civilians. The United Nations says over 20 million people now face starvation. Foreign aid can't reach them. Roads are blocked and planes are being shot down. Now the RSF controls most of Western Sudan, while the army holds the east. But both sides keep fighting, using drones and foreign weapons.
I'm going to now show you some of what is going on. Not all of it, but some of it. As I speak, I'm going to leave these pictures on so that you can see them. many people have been displaced. Right now, even when we talk about displacement, my organization works to feed some people in the IDPS camps, and internally displaced people's camp in Borno State, Nigeria, where there's a lot of this discord going on, and the activity based on the activities of Boko Haram. Many of these people are displaced, so that's going on. And I just wanted to show you the human calamity that's going on. Unless you're there, you don't know the extent of it. Some of the people that I work with, they know exactly, because they work in the IDPS camps. They know exactly the devastation the people are facing in the Sudan, and certainly in all the other African countries. But you see, the point of the matter, however, is that many of us don't know anything about this. Many of us don't know. But the question then is, why don't we know? Why don't we know? There's a reason why we don't know what's going on. The way Africa is portrayed in international media is not neutral. It is a complex system of narratives that often simplify, homogenize, and sensationalize what's going on there, leading directly to the observed care disparity. What do I mean by that? This framework, often called Afro-pessimism, you probably have never heard that word before. Afro-pessimism fundamentally influences how conflicts and humanitarian crises are received globally. It depends on how it's presented. That's what influences if people know about it or if people don't know about it, if people care about it or people don't care about it. Care disparity. For the most part, as you all know, when something is going on in the European world, everybody is alert. Everybody wants to talk about it. It's on the news, and they show pictures of the devastation that whatever the conflict is causing. People get emotionally attached to it. They send money. They do all of that. But you have to remember that the European nations, when they're in conflict, they are presented as individual countries, not the whole Europe. But in the case of Africa, it's presented as if it's all of Africa that's going through that. So homogenization, treating 54 nations, there are 54 nations in Africa. We treat them as if they are one. So that it appears that whatever the issue is with one country, then that it's smeared all over Africa. So if you're not interested in what's going on in this nation, you're certainly not going to be interested in what's going on elsewhere. The single biggest failure of international media is the tendency to treat Africa as a single, massive, and uniform entity, rather than a continent of 54 distinct, diverse nations with unique histories, politics, and challenges. They're all lumped into one. And once you lump them into one, you don't see the uniqueness. You don't see the reason why this is happening. You just assume it's happening all over Africa. So then what happens is you develop care disparity. You're no longer, you don't really care, because you assume, oh, it's just Africa. That's just the way it is. Okay. The African problem, it becomes the African problem, not the problem of the particular place where it's happening. It becomes the African problem. So the conflicts reported in the media, they are rarely reported as the internal political struggle in country X, in a particular country, but they are often lumped under the umbrella of African conflicts or tribal violence. You guys see where I'm going with this? This erases the specific context. Making it impossible for foreign audiences to understand the nuances or identify solutions. So what happens in country X is applied to all of Africa. And so it becomes too much to handle. It's just the way Africa is. It's not looked at as what the struggles that this particular African nation is going through. It's seen as this is just how Africa is. Then you have the context erosion. Because the media tends to generalize, it fails to explain the specific historical, colonial, and environmental factors that are driving a conflict, like the resource extraction in the DRC or climate-induced instability in the Sahel. Instead, the default narrative falls back on simplistic and often racist tropes about inherent instability throughout Africa, not in that particular country. When I talk to someone and they're quick to say to me, oh yeah, Africa, they have a lot of conflicts over there. But they're basing that not on what they really know about the conflict. What they know is what the media has said. And because the media lobs Africa as one country. That's why you ask some people about Africa, they think Africa is a country. Africa is a continent with 54 countries in it. So there are some areas in Africa that are doing very well. But because you lump us all together, right, you now have the impression there's conflict throughout Africa. And a lot of that is racist. You present Africa as inherently unstable. Because an issue is happening here, instead of us trying to show interest and address it, then we think that's just the way they are in Africa. It's just the way things are. Now, there's another narrative that is always used in describing what's going on in Africa. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm trying to tell you why many of you don't know what's going on. Because when you hear about what's going on in Sudan, you're made to think it's throughout Africa. That's just the way things are in Africa. So you tend to lose interest because it becomes too much. Oh, this is going on in all Africa is just like that. So you're not interested in being a part of the solution. You don't even want to hear it. The crisis-centric narrative, you all know that, the 3Ds. When they cover Africa, it is usually focused on negative events. Negative events creating a perpetual state of emergency in the public imagination. When they cover Africa, they only see the negative, disaster, disease, despair. The coverage is called 3Ds. Disaster. What are some of the disasters that they cover when you talk about Africa? It's usually famine. They show famine. They show floods and natural catastrophe. So when they show Africa, and if they're showing just one part of Africa, they focus on the disaster that's happening there, but they make it seem like it's all of Africa, so that people are not inclined to do much because it's overwhelming. It's just way too many things happening. So because of that, you know, we just can't, there's nothing we can do about it, just the way Africa is. Then there's the narrative about disease. The other D is disease, epidemics, Ebola, malaria, HIV, you name it. They attach that to Africa. That's one of the 3Ds, disease. And then the other one is despair. Oh, it's so much despair there in Africa. You know, war, corruption, humanitarian crisis. When you portray Africa as one country, so that when something happens in one country, you say that it's, you make it seem like it's all of Africa that's that way, it becomes overwhelming for people. They think, you know, there's nothing you can do. The whole continent is a mess. So instead of the world trying to figure out how to help that particular area where this issue is happening, they just turn away. They don't announce it. It doesn't become a topic of conversation for any television station. Maybe a little blip of it, or maybe a little line of it, because it's assumed that's just the way things are. That's just the way they are over there. And if that's the case, there's nothing you can do. So the absence of normal reporting makes it difficult for people to know exactly what's going on in any particular part of Africa, as opposed to, oh, generalization. This is just the way Africa is. See, when the news cycle is solely dominated regarding Africa on crisis, because if you look at, if there's a discussion about Africa, what is it? It's the government, they're all corrupt and all that sort of thing. But there are some African nations that are doing quite well. But because we smear Africa with the challenges of one particular area, then you're less inclined to be interested in what's going on in Africa. So this is the absence of normal reporting. You know, if it's just crisis on top of crisis, the audience never learns about the continent's vibrant arts. They don't know about the technological innovations that are going on there, the economic growth, stable democracies, or the cultural life, because of it's not normal reporting. It's all about crisis. That's the focus. So people start to tune out. So if they say, oh, something is happening in the Sudan, oh yeah, it's Africa. Well, you know how it is. But they're not focusing on what's going on in the Sudan. They see it as something that's going on in Africa. And consequently, they're not interested. They are stable democracies, there are lots of cultural life, lots of vibrant arts, technological innovations, as I said earlier, economic development, all of that stuff is not even more. A lot of people, quite frankly, when you talk about Africa, they look at you like, oh, that poor place, that terrible place. They don't realize that the world's resources are all concentrated in Africa. Rich, rich continent. But all you know about it, all most people know about it is just crisis. If there's a crisis in one country, then there must be crisis all over Africa. So the absence of positive or normal reporting makes it easier to dismiss the whole Africa as perpetually broken. What I'm showing, the pictures that I'm showing, I'm not showing it to say that this is all of Africa. I'm showing you what's going on in the Sudan. That's what's going on in the Sudan based on the crisis there. That's not what's going on in every African country. This doesn't apply to every African country. So if there's any aid that could be offered, it could be offered to the Sudan. If you narrow it, it's more likely to be managed than if you make it the whole Africa continent-wide. That's the problem. That's why a lot of people have no interest in what's going on in Africa, because they just think, well, you know, Africa is just full of trouble. And that's the narrative of the media. That's the narrative of media. Or the other thing, they make Africa, they have the victim and hero trope. You know, when an African when African people are shown, they're often portrayed either as helpless, passive victims requiring Western aid. You all know what I'm talking about. We are always the victim. And that's when you're talking about all of Africa. They're always the victim. Or if somebody does well in Africa, you know, they are isolated, extraordinary individuals, the hero. It couldn't be the way things are. It couldn't be that there's so many people who have such skills. They'll pick one person and make that hero, and then it becomes, you know, you have the heroes, then you have the victims, and then the heroes are those who overcome impossible odds. I mean, they are African, for heaven's sake. They overcame that. This is the media that portrays, they pick and choose how they want to portray Africa. This framing of Africa removes agency and obscures the capacity for collective action and political reform as it pertains to that particular country that is suffering. But when you make it so overwhelming, when you just spread it all, you know, Africa has all these problems, then you seem overwhelmed. You become overwhelmed. You know, well, there's nothing you can do. There's nothing anybody can do, because there's always strife, always strife, always strife. Well, the point of the matter should be, if you're paying any attention, is where is that strife happening? Not all of Africa. There are specific areas that have challenges. And if we know and target those specific areas, we can do something about it. But when you make it so big, like all of Africa, all 54 countries are suffering, you're not going to do anything. You're not going to be inclined to do a doggone thing. And then there's the poverty porn dynamic. You know, we use the emotionally manipulative imagery to solicit donations. You see that, you know that happens. Now, that's not to say there's anything wrong with trying to solicit donations, but if that's all we use to show interest in Africa, then of course it's always going to be seen as a poverty-torn place. It's called poverty porn. And that has a long-lasting effect, damaging effect on global interest. If we're always seen as poverty, poor people, see the children with the flies and all that sort of thing, that's not to say that such a thing doesn't happen. Yes, it does happen, but that is not the norm for Africa. But when the media presents it, this poverty porn, when the media presents us as always hungry, always, water, we can't take care of ourselves, then we don't look at those good things that are happening. We don't see those organizations that are making a difference. All we see is those poor people, and we can use them to make money. That, as a matter of fact, there are people who make money using those pictures of these people who are struggling. And the people don't even get the money. The people when you consider how much money is raised to support Africa, we should be doing extremely well. But they use that money for themselves. So it's not really, they may raise the money, but it's not really for the people. You see, it's called poverty porn. And that dynamic is very, any one of you who go to Africa and type in Africa, for the most part, that's what you're going to get. All these negative pictures, and then we sensationalize suffering. That's the word I'm looking for. Why drawing attention to suffering is necessary, reliance on extreme, emotionally draining images of African people, of severely malnourished people, children of war, casualties, it can lead to compassion fatigue. Because after a while, when you see enough of that, and you generalize, that's just how Africans are. You become fatigued. If something is going on in China that's devastating, you're more apt to pay interest. You're more apt to show interest, because it's not being generalized. If something is happening in any European nation, it's not generalized. It's focused on where that's happening. And you are not fatigued yet. All those poor people, you want to help. But when it comes to Africa, where everybody supposedly has no food, everybody's malnourished, people live in huts. There's nothing wrong with people living in huts. I'm not bemoaning that. But the point of the matter is, as long as you are focusing on those areas and you make it, the media makes it appear that it's all throughout Africa, people generate that kind of imagery and they get tired. They don't want to hear anymore. It's enough. It's too much. That's why you don't know what's going on in Africa. And what I mean is, if you want to know about Africa, find out what's going on in each country. Don't generalize, because when you base your knowledge about Africa on generalizations of what media presents, then what's going to happen is you're not going to be interested. And there's a tendency to reinforce stereotypes. That's another thing that the media does. It reinforces the stereotype of the continent as solely a place of destitution. Now, you guys hear me? You know what I'm talking about, because some of you believe that. Some of you actually think that Africa is a place of destitution. And when you believe that, it further dehumanizes the people affected by reducing them to symbols of need rather than complex human beings that need attention. Hear what I said there. That's important. We reduce Africans to symbols of rather than complex human beings that need attention. We reinforce all this stereotype. You know, they're hungry all the time. There's always war, there's greed. And then we forget that there are some African countries that are doing extremely well. So when we have somewhere that's doing badly, we need to focus, like what's going on in the Sudan. Girls are being raped, women are being raped, men are just being killed at will. Children are, I mean, it's all kinds of hell, excuse the expression, going on over there. But many people don't know this because they're not looking at the Sudan, they're looking at Africa. They're thinking this is how Africa is. Many people are tune out. I've had conversations with some people here in the US, and they have no clue about Africa. Some of the things that they say about Africa is like so nonsensical. It's like, are you serious right now? I remember when I was in college, a young girl asked me, you know, how we know how to get up in the morning. You know, I told her, well, you know, we climb. No, her argument was that she hears or she heard that we live on trees. Africans live on trees. And how do we know to get up in the morning? I mean, to me, besides the sunlight, okay, let's continue with the conversation. She wants to know, well, how do you know how to get up in the morning? And I said, well, you know, what we do is we climb the trees and we listen and wait till we hear Tarzan go, yeah, we know it's time to get up. You may think that's silly. That is the extent of knowledge she has about Africa, because Africa to her is a primitive place. That's all she knows, because maybe she saw some pictures of some particular areas in Africa and it's been generalized. And she thinks that's what Africa is. That's why she had the audacity to ask me something that dumb. You may think it's dumb. I know it's dumb. She didn't think it was dumb. She actually asked that question. And so much more. And I don't want to go to all that, you know. But the sad part of all of this is that even Africans themselves, I think that's the worst part of all of this, is the Africans themselves begin to believe all of this stuff themselves, even though they come from Africa and they know it's not like that. But when you consistently bombard people in the media about your place, sometimes you begin to not see the positive and start seeing the negative. And some of them may even have no interest in developing on the continent, but would rather leave it because of some of the stereotypes that they themselves have bought into. So this is very important, and that's why a lot of us, I've got to admit, a lot of us, when we talk about what's going on in Africa, some of us don't even want to know. Oh, I'm talking about us. You know how our people are. How are your people? It's the same thing here in the African American community. If there's a need, you say, you know how they are. How they are? That's the media. I was watching this young man who said that he didn't want to come. When he came to America, he came from Mexico. When he came to America, he was told to stay away from Black people. You know, they'll try to steal from you. They'll try to do this and all that kind of stuff. Stereotypes. And as a young man, he did not want to have anything to do with Black people. It's the same thing. The stereotype that spread about Africans make it so that people don't want to be associated with that. You know, there they are. You see all these kids with the flies and everything. Oh my God, the Africans just have flies. You know, you see them living in huts. Oh my God, they all live in huts. You know, not that there's anything wrong with that. You know, you hang your coat according to your size. You know, so people build their homes according to what's necessary, you know, for them. You know, a poor person is only poor if you convince them that what they have is not good enough. That's poverty. There are people who are quite happy with who they are and where they are. But when you start bombarding them with nonsense, or you don't have enough, then they start saying, why don't I have what this person has, blah blah blah, that kind of thing. So it's really, really important that we understand that the reason why there is not much help coming for Africa is because of how Africa is portrayed. And there's also the structural constraints of news gathering. Sometimes the way that they gather the news itself creates imbalance. You get on the plane, and you see a journalist. Where's he going? Oh, he's going to. I've got to share this with you. This was many years ago. This gentleman was in the plane with us. Now at that time it was Pan African Airlines, Panam. It was from Panam Airlines, right? And he was dressed like he was going out to the safari. He's a journalist. And I thought it was really funny. Why are you dressed like that? He says, well, because he's going to Africa. I said, I'm going to Africa too. I'm not dressed like that. But why are you dressed like you're going to the safari? He says, well, Africa is the jungle, the jungle and all of that. I'm not making this stuff up. I said, jungle? He says, yes, so you're dressed with a funny looking cap. And who are you expecting to see? This man really thought he was going to see the animals and all. I said, the only animals I've seen myself, I've been at the zoo. So unless you plan to go and make you're going to go and stay in the zoo, then maybe what you got on is appropriate. But you see, they are fly in, fly out journalism. These are people, they don't have a permanent place in Africa, right? They come in and they go. They don't have a bureaus or any particular place that monitors what's going on. They just have this fly-by-night journalists. They fly in only when there's a crisis. They don't follow anything, from its inception. They come in when it's a big crisis. When it reaches catastrophic level, that's when they come in. And then they do a reporting. They don't even know what led to that catastrophic level. They just report on what they see and they run out, and then they base it on previous information they may have read or something like that. So these reporters, they lack deep regional knowledge of what's happening. They all rely on pre-existing simplified frameworks to quickly file their reports, their stories before they leave the country. Those are some of these are some of the people who influence your thoughts, your opinion, your impressions about Africa and the conflicts that go on there. The Western hook, the Western, for a story to gain traction, it needs a Western hook. This is a very interesting part that you should pay attention. A connection to a major global power, a threat to European or American interests, or the involvement of Western citizens or aid workers. If the conflict is purely local, it struggles to make headlines. But when it is connected to a superpower, or it's a threat to American interests, to European interests, something like that, that's when it becomes important. Otherwise, it struggles to make headlines. Nobody wants to talk about it. That's another part. That's another reason why some of these things are not reported. That's why you don't know about them. So it's not that people are not really interested. It's that how it's presented determines the level of interest that people will have. When you have that Western hook, if the Western nations are impacted, then it becomes something that's important that we want to know about it. If the Western countries are not impacted, for the most part, we don't want to know. We don't want to know. So it's really, really important for us to understand the reason why a lot of these, and I'm keeping these pictures here, but I'm keeping it to emphasize the Sudan, what's going on in the Sudan. This is not what's going on in all of Africa. This is what's going on in the catastrophe, the human catastrophe that's going on. These people have no water to drink, no food, no nothing, and they have children. you know, but most people don't know. Many people don't know that this is what's going on. So many people don't bother to support them. And it goes on and on and on and on and on. And most of us, and that to me, this is really, really important. Most of us really do not care, because for a lot of us, Black people, we think it doesn't, it doesn't affect us. It's over there. But anything that affects any Black person anywhere, as an African person, we should be concerned. I'm not so concerned the rest of the world being caring enough to help us. It's a global world. It's certainly important for us, for everybody to care about everybody, because Black people certainly help. They help when something happens anywhere. We support. We give our support. And certainly we expect and would appreciate that people support us as well when things are happening. However, it's important for us African people to not listen or focus our interest on what's going on in Africa based on what the media is saying to us. Because the media doesn't always paint the right picture. It doesn't paint the right picture to enable you to understand exactly where these problems are happening. It tells you in your mind what a chaotic continent. You don't want to be bothered. So if we rely consistently on these narratives, on the global media telling us what's going on the continent, what happens is it provides us with distorted, overwhelming, and context-free picture of the conflicts in Africa, making it easier for people to look away, for policymakers to look away. It's too overwhelming. It's too overwhelming. But for anything to happen, we need to, pardon me, we need to, and it's a mindset that I would like to see us as African people develop. First of all, we need to be interested in what's going on in the continent and what's going on here in the United States. If you're an African person, you should be concerned about what's going on with Africans in the United States, in the Caribbean, wherever that's going. If you want to give support to them. Give support to your own people. It doesn't make you racist. A little bit of ethnocentrism does not hurt. We have to show some concern for our own people. And we should not rely on the distortions that make it difficult for us to understand exactly where the challenges are. I'm going to, let's see. It's heartbreaking, the 3 atrocities that are happening. We need to advocate and find a way to help. That's it. Thank you, Sovereign. That's just the point. You cannot advocate for something that's not presented in a manner that allows you to advocate. That's the problem. The atrocities that are going on there, it has become so normalized that it's just the way Africa is. So your emotions are not attached. It's not sufficiently evoked for you to say, hey, I want to help. And again, like I said, our own people sometimes don't even want to be a part of it. They don't want to help. They don't know, because the media portrays it as Africa-wide, and consequently, it's too much. That's right. You're right. We should help. We need to be active and have the same energy like we have for the atrocities happening in Gaza. Oh my God. Thank you. Yes. Yes, I can tell you how many. And what's going on in Gaza is a heartbreak. It's a complete heartbreak. It tells you how humanity can establish a sense of superiority over others, that they don't see the humanity in others. And it's okay to do what some of those things that are happening there. It's just, I mean, where do you start? But the same thing and just as bad is happening on the continent of Africa, in particular countries, the Congo, the Sudan, some areas of Nigeria. But the sad thing is there's not as much energy and emphasis on helping those areas because, again, the media does not make it seem like it's worth, it's just too much. It's just the way Africa is. So, you can only do so much. So yes, we need to have the same energy. And the way you do it, and the next week, I'm going to be speaking on who's doing what in Africa and how each one of us can help. And I do have some really emotional videos of people telling their stories that I would like you to see. But there are people who are actually making a difference. There are people who are looking beyond the misrepresentations or mispresentation about Africa and who know what's going on and are trying to make a difference. It is so important that we don't turn our backs. We do that a lot. And it's because of the narratives that we buy into. It's because of the narratives. And those narratives are not always positive, as I indicated earlier. So now we have to write our own story. We need to, if you know that something is wrong, then you don't throw your hands up in the air and say, well, that's just the way the media is. Well, find your own story, write your own story, find the truth. I mean, we live in a technological age, so you can, pardon me, you can find out a whole lot of things. If you find things that are wrong, you can help be a part of the solution, and that's what next week I'm going to be sharing with you. The countries or organizations, the many organizations that are going into Africa, specific African countries, to make a difference. And I applaud those people, and I'll share them with you. And I think that each one of us can really actually do something, because these are our people. These are our people. And the fact that we are not paying close attention to what's happening to them it speaks volumes, not about those who are not interested, but about us not being interested. If something is good, now they just had a big some weather related incidents in Jamaica. How many of us sent a penny? How many of us even asked? Now, some other people would look into it, but not us. They had this big storm that just ravaged. I don't know, it's hurricane something. What's hurricane? But I'm curious to know how many people of African descent from the continent or who live here actually showed an interest. How many really sent a penny to support them? I'll be curious to know. That's it. That's what I want to share with you today. And there is no one out there to solve these problems but us. And the way we get started is to show some interest in finding out the truth about the continent. If you want to help Africa, if you want to help the Sudan, you have to see the issue as a Sudanese issue and find out how you can help the Sudan, not how you can help Africa. Now, there are some other conflict or countries that have conflict. Well, find out what those specific countries are and what their specific needs are. We cannot generalize. And generalizing, as I indicated earlier, is the reason why we don't go any further. That's why we don't support. That's why we throw our hands up in the air. I mean, there's nothing I can do. There's always something you can do. There's always something we can do. All of us can do something. And we should not wait for outsiders, if I may use that expression, to do the work for us, to support us. We can support our own. We can do it. So today, I'm going to challenge you, go and find out what you can do to, and and here's the thing, people tend to think if they don't have money, then they can't help. Well, you know what? You can help. Even if you don't have money, you can help solicit money for the organization, for the country. For the organizations that are helping, that need the money. If you don't have the money, you can solicit. You can go to the, some of them have GoFundMe. And if you know what the link is, share it on your Facebook page, share it on your TikTok. You can do something. You may not have the finances to necessarily give money, which I understand. Money is not easy to come on to these days. I understand that. But you can definitely help to solicit. You can help, if you have the time, you can go to wherever they're providing food, or you can go and be a server. You can go and help serve. You can travel to that country if you can. If you can't, I understand. But there's always something. Find out what organizations are helping and how you can help. I made a little donation to an organization that helps people in Jamaica. Well, my little dollars may not be much, but that's certainly more than they had to start with. Whatever you give is more than they had to start with, So we must be a part of the solution. And like I said, next week I'm going to dive right into it and help you see what you can do to help. All of us can do a lot. Every one of us has something to offer. There are a lot of grassroots organizations that are available and waiting. Yes, they need help. We can help. Challenge yourself. Challenge yourself. Don't be a critic. Some of us just love to criticize. We just criticize and we don't do anything. I'm tired of listening to people criticize. I want to know what are you doing? What can you do? If you don't know what to do, go to these organizations that are doing something. They'll tell you what you can do. But the Sudan is on fire right now. The Sudan needs our help. The Congo. Now, this has been an ongoing thing. And like I said earlier, that is why people don't help, because everything is so generalized. You think it's all of Africa, so that we don't go to the specific areas. The Sudan crisis is getting worse and worse, and it's even worse for those, particularly the girls and the women who are suffering. And there are no consequences for rapes and those kinds of human horror stories. That's coming out from the Sudan. It's just all over the place. But I have some individuals that have some stories to share about their experience in the Sudan. Please, these people are human beings. They are not items to people that we need to be scornful, about. They are going through challenges, just like, we are all, everyone someday, if you're lucky, you get out of this world and you don't experience conflict. I've experienced conflict. Many people experience it. You may be one of these days. It may be you. It may be you. So, open your eyes, open your heart, open your mind. Be willing to help humanity, particularly Sudan right now. The Sudan needs us. And Sovereign says it takes a village. Then we need to be that village. Thank you. Who are we waiting for? We are the village we're waiting for. We are members of that village. We need to be the village advocates and be a voice for them through our actions. Yes, through our actions. We can do it. And like I said earlier, you don't have to give money to the Sudan. You go and find out. If you don't have the money, find out how you can help. Because we need to start showing interest in our own people. We shouldn't leave it to other people to show interest. And I'm talking about interest in what's going on in Africa, what's going on in African American communities. We need to be interested. It is up to us. If it's going to be solved, it's going to be up to us. Looking to other people to do it, it's not gonna happen, because they painted the continent as one big pile of mess. not as individual countries with their own individual challenges, with reasons why they are where they are. And it becomes our responsibility to find out what that is. What is it? What's going on? How can we help? It takes a village. Thank you, Sovereign. Yeah, it does take a village. We are that village. We are that village that we're talking about, you know. And if you call yourself a, you know, we may have to take away your Black identity if you don't want to help your own people. Then stop saying I'm Black. Stop saying that. You know, it should be an honor and a sense of responsibility. You know, don't just be out there talking about I'm this. No. When it comes to helping them, helping our people, what role are you playing? Do you know anything about the Sudan? If you don't know, you should know. I know that what's going on in the Gaza is horrific. It's horrific. There are many other places that horrific things are happening. But do you know what's happening on the continent? Or do you think because you live in America, it doesn't affect you? Or because you think you live in Africa, it doesn't affect you? It affects you. If you're an African person, wherever you go in this world, it affects you. People will look at you the same way they look at the Africans. If they think African is bad, I don't care if you're an African American, they look down on you too. But it's up to us to lift ourselves up. Pay attention to what's going on on our continent, in our communities. I always challenge African Americans, show interest in Africa. When this ground shakes, you have to have somewhere to go. Same thing, diaspora Africans on the continent. African Americans are part of our brothers and sisters who were taken away. We are family. Don't think we're different. We're not. We truly are not. And the sooner we realize it, the better. If you want people to respect you, you have to respect yourself first. You have to show enough passion about who you are for another person to show passion for you. But if you're consistently showing passion for other people's challenges, but your challenges are mounting and you're waiting for somebody else who's possibly participating in what's causing the problem on the continent to come and help you, you got a problem. And those African leaders who continue to do what they're doing is because the rest of us are not screaming and yelling. That's just the bottom line. We have to show interest. We have to be committed. And if we're not committed, well, you know, nobody else is going to be committed. So I am so grateful that some of you joined us today, and I know this video is going to keep playing, and you can share it because this is a very important topic. The crisis in the Sudan is getting worse and worse and worse, and you can be the source of solution. And if you want to know more, next week we're going to have a good episode that's going to show some of the stories that people are telling, and those people who are in there making a difference. These are people who have narrowed it to the Sudan, not throughout Africa, but just narrowed it to what's going on in the Sudan. And we need to know what they're doing, and you need to know so you can see, okay, what role can I play? Because all of us can play a role. All of us can play a role. I want to thank you so very much for joining us today. Next week, I look forward to seeing all of you. Sovereign, thank you so much for your contribution. You're always contributing, and we're always appreciating it. Okay, and before we go, I just want to present information from our sponsor.
Pamper your skin with our Honey Nectar Body Cream. Enriched with honey, it deeply hydrates for soft, glowing skin. Silky smooth, sweetly scented, and perfect for any moment because you deserve it. Power up your skincare with our Honey Nectar Body Cream. Infused with honey, it hydrates and protects, leaving skin smooth and refreshed. With a subtle, masculine scent, it's confidence in a jar.
chicandsmooth.myshopify.com. That's where you get the Manon. For those of you who know, Manon is be sweet. bee nectar, one of the most exciting things that we have produced, and that's it helps sponsor Ntomodu show. So if you're interested, please make sure that you go. As a matter of fact, let me give you the address so that you can go there. Give me 1 second and I'll find it. And you can go there and get your, there we go. Chic and Smooth on Spotify. Chic and Smooth on Spotify. Manuango. I want to thank all of you for joining us today. Thank you for, I'm hoping, thank you, my darling. Great show, and thank you for bringing and speaking on it. We have to take action. Yes, we have to. Everybody can do something. Everybody can do something. If you don't know what to do, just go to the information is everywhere. If you go to your browser and type in the situation in the Sudan, how can I help? You will, a whole bunch of places will show up that you can contact and find out how you can help. We must be the solution. We can't talk about it. Talking about it is a waste of time. Being a part of the solution is what it's all about. We need to have interest in our people, what's going on in our world, and not expect other people to solve our problems, because they're not going to do it. If you're an African American, be interested in what's going on in Africa. If you're diasporan African, from wherever part of the diaspora that you are, show interest in what's going on in Africa. And if you're an African person, show interest in what's going on in the diaspora, in African communities, in Jamaica, in all the other African countries or outside of Africa. You've got to show interest. You cannot be just them showing interest in what happens to us. We have to show in the Caribbean, in African American communities, and so on and so forth. Not just and in England, wherever our people are. If we find that there's something happening, we have to show interest. It's not up to anybody else to do for us. We have the capacity. We do have the capacity. We have the financial means. We have the heart. We're spiritual people. We're religious. Name it. We've got what it takes to show interest in what's happening to us. So on that note, I'll end our show today. And I remind you to please don't just watch what's going on. Be part of the solution. Next week, we are going to meet some individuals who are doing some exceptional things to help with what's going on in the Sudan and quite frankly, what's going on in the Congo. And of course, we'll talk about what's going on in Nigeria, or what is being suggested that should happen in Nigeria. That one is going to be very interesting. Okay, well, thank you so very much for joining me today. It's always a pleasure to spend the morning with you and Ntomodu. I hope you learned something today that you can add to your repertoire. Thank you, and I really do hope that you join me next week. Okay, diaspora on the continent, we must be active. There is a genocide. That's right. I'm glad that I came back to play that. There's a genocide happening, and we can't turn our backs. We cannot. If it happens there, it can happen anywhere. So let's be about it. Let's support our own people. Go check it out. What's going on in the Sudan? Type it on your browser. Find out a whole lot of people that can. You find out a lot of information, but at the same time, you find out how you can help. Because yes, you can help. Thank you for being here. I look forward to seeing you next week on the Ntomodu show on Saturday at 10 a.m. Be there. Have a good day.